Good day. This is Jeremy with JT&S, Public Works Safety Instructor. At this point in time, if you would, please pause the video and discuss any accidents or near misses that may have happened. And when you're done discussing them, hit play and continue on with the presentation. We're going to talk about line tapping, and line tapping can be gas, it can be PE plastic, it can be steel, tapping water mains, or tapping sewers with a force main sewer or gravity feed sewer. So we're going to start out talking about tapping gas. But hot tapping. Hot tapping is referred to as line tapping, pressure tapping, pressure cutting, and side cutting. The process involves attaching a branch connection and cutting holes into the operating pipeline without interruption of gas flow and with no release or loss of product. Most line taps are made with a weldolet. It's a pre-cut and angled beveled tap, and it'll be welded to a steel gas line. If you are not certified to weld that tap to that steel gas line, do not do it. Let somebody else weld it who is certified from a reputable company who certifies that. When welding a service tap, make sure the pipe being welded is thick enough and not corroded, and it can handle the heat. If you blow through that gas line when you're welding, it will spark an arc. You will have enough oxygen or gas mix. It will catch on fire. You can weld it while it's hot if you know what you're doing when you weld it to weld it back up. I do recommend that you have a fire extinguisher on site close to the welding area and manned by a competent person. OSHA says within 50 feet of the job being welded. I recommend 25. Think about how fast it takes somebody to react. No, the fire extinguisher will not do a lot of good for you, but it can knock a fireball down to allow you to get out of the hole of what you're welding on. So remove the tapping insert. That will keep you from avoiding, or that will keep it from getting damaged from the heat that the welder will produce. And it will put the cap back on, and that protects the threads while you're welding it. When welding, it is optimal to make 3 passes. You will do a root pass on the weldolet, and that root pass means you will weld the pipe and the tap and burn it in real good. The second pass is called a hot pass or a fill pass. That will fill the gap the way in the weldolet because it is tapered, so that will fill the gap up. Then your third pass will be a cap pass. It is no different if you weld a pipe to a pipe. It must be tapered on each end, has a small gap, and when you run that root pass, you weld that pipe on the inside from the outside. You just burn down through it and it goes around, and then you do a fill and a cap. It's called a 3-pass 60-10 6G weld. You do have to be certified to weld them gas lines and weld onto the steel with the taps. Once that weld is finished, it should be charged with air and tested before the tap is made into the gas main. That way, if you ever have a leak, you will be able to go back at that time and grind some of your weld back off where the air bubbles are, and rerun that pass back over it. And then you will have to retest it again and make sure you have no bubbles from the soap and water, no leaks, no nothing. So if the leak is found, grind it out. It's very easy. Grind that spot out. Don't grind into the pipe. And once you re-weld it, air test it again. Once no leaks is found, reinstall the tapping insert and make the tap into the main. On PE fusion welding, that's a different story. Now you're messing with plastic. In the fall of the year, the air is dry. Fall of the year, there's a lot of static in the air. You take your shirt off, your hair stands up. You touch somebody and you electrocute them. Same thing can happen with the PE plastic. Before you go to trying to work on PE plastic or even making the tap on it, the first and foremost thing you want to do is lay something over that plastic to the ground, put some water on it, and ground it. Make sure yourself is grounded before you mess with it. One static charge on any gas leak from that PE plastic can cause ignition and a fire. So PE plastic should be cleaned before a weld is made to ensure that the seal is good. When you open up the tap, it has sandpaper in it. You sand the tap, you sand the pipe. You make sure it's good and clean, scuff sanded, and a tapping saddle is installed to hold the tap in place. There's a picture in the next slide of what I'm referring to. The tap is placed in the saddle and is ready to be heated and pressed into the pipe, and that is called a plastic fusion. When you do that, a hot iron is heated and it goes over the pipe on one side and the tap rests on the top side. Pressure is then pushed down until the pipe is starting to melt. Do not melt through the pipe. Once you see the plastic start to melt, remove the iron, press the tap down to the plastic, add a little bit of pressure till you see the roll come around the tap, and once you see that, you stop and you let the pressure stay there until it cools. Once it cools, then it can be pressure tested to ensure that no leaks is found, and then you can continue on with the rest of the installation. This is a Sidewinder saddle fusion. It clamps to the pipe on the bottom. Your tap, the cap will be screwed down tight. It goes underneath the pressure gauge and it is locked into place. You push it down onto the pipe and you get it all centered, and once everything is centered and square and lined up, you tighten everything down and secure it. You raise it up. Once the iron reaches a certain temperature, it will go, it sets into the little grooves that you see on the plate in the back, and you press down on the top and you apply a slight amount of pressure and it will start to melt. Do not melt through that pipe. You only need enough to get it to where it will bond. The fusion bond should be stronger than the PE plastic itself. A double-sided hot iron is used to heat the tap and the pipe at the same time. Once heated, the tap is then pressed onto the pipe until it is cooled. When you see the roll come up, stop pressing. Just let it set and cool. Tap should be air tested, again to ensure no leaks. PE fusion is quicker than stick welding. I think it's a little easier myself. and most PE taps do require to have an SS flow valve, which restricts pressure flow in case of line damage. This is what the hot iron looks like. You can see he's doing a manual press instead of using the tapping saddle, pressing on the top while he's pressing against the pipe itself. And once it's reached to a certain temperature and it starts to melt, then he will press them together and it will form a bond. That bond will be stronger than the pipe itself. During OQ training, you will have to be checked off by the certified person to ensure that you are qualified to make this fusion weld. It does have to be documented when that fusion weld is made and who made it. That way they'll know. There's also a number that is on the taps. That number has to be documented on the service order as well. In case there is a problem with that particular tap, then it's easy to go back to that address and find out where it was installed, and corrections can be made. There is an SS flow valve that is melted to the tap. It is used, a flat iron is used. It heats both sides of the pipe. There is a tool that works that hot iron, and it clamps both pipes from each side and pulls them together again until the pipe is melted and you see the roll start. Then your iron is removed. It is pulled together. Once it is pulled together, you will look for the roll on both pipes and you leave it in place with the pressure until it cools. Once it's cooled, then it can be removed and your SS flow is then set and you're ready to run your PE plastic all the way up to the house. And you will have to fuse the J-bend or the riser onto it, and then you can connect your meter up and there. Once it's all connected, you can make your tap. The SS flow, again, if the homeowner decides to do some digging or somebody else and they dig across that gas line, they hit it and tear it, the SS flow will close immediately. It will still seep a little gas, but it shuts off and it does not have a full flow of gas. By doing so, the repair can be made. Takes about 20 to 30 minutes for the line to repressurize and the SS flow will release, and then you can purge off at the meter and relight the pilot lights and whatever they have on their system. Tapping a water main can be dangerous as tapping a gas main. With gas, it takes three things to make fire. You got to have heat, you got to have fuel, you got to have oxygen. Well, oxygen is in the air, 21%. Your natural gas, there's your fuel source. Your ignition source will be a static charge, and it could be the hot iron if you burn through it. With water, you don't have the chance for fire. But keep in mind, they use water pressure to cut steel. They use water pressure to cut aluminum. That water pressure can cut through you easier than it can steel or anything to that nature. So water pressure, as I said, it can cut the steel. It can cut your skin real easy. When tapping a water main, use tapping saddles that bolt on. It's great. Don't stand on that pipe with your rubber boots just to knock the water pressure down. Don't do that. It can cut right through that rubber boot, cut right through your foot. Once the pipe is clean and the saddle is bolted into place, a cutoff valve is installed to the saddle. Then the tapping tool is installed and a hole is cut into the pipe. This can be done with utility workers. It can be done through a contractor. So just make sure what you're cutting into, everything is set, everything is tight, and you have everything you need in place. The hazards that comes with tapping pipes, and it depends on what you're tapping. When welding steel gas pipes, you can burn through and have a blowout, which can ignite. So keep that fire extinguisher at the weld site and keep it manned at all times while the welding is going on. That is very important. Most welds are made while the line is hot. It is best to shut off the line and double block and bleed if you can. 90% of the time, you cannot kill a gas line. It's not possible due to the large quantity of houses that are connected. If you shut down a main, you could shut off gas to 100 houses that will have to be gone back and all the gas meters turned off and then gone back and everyone turned on individually and all the pilot lights relit once the air is bled out of the system. You're talking a time-consuming process, so therefore 90% of your gas mains and valves are welded while they're hot. When dealing with the PE lines, unlike arc welding, there's no open flames, but you're still using heat. It's a heat source. Three things: heat, fuel, oxygen. Creates a chemical chain reaction, you get fire. So PE can produce a static charge that can ignite the gas, so it should be grounded along with yourself. You can put a knee on the ground, make sure you put a rag over the PE plastic, put some water on it so it is bonded to the ground and it is grounded. You can melt through that line, you can cause a gas leak. Conditions can become right when inside of that hole. I do recommend that if you're making a tap with fear of blowing through it, either welding or using PE plastic, keep a monitor on you. Keep an air monitor. It will tell you if you got a leak in that hole. It will tell you if that mixture hits the LELs or the UELs. In between that, guys, it's the perfect conditions to have a fire. You can have an environment that is too lean to burn. You can have an environment that is too rich to burn. But we're talking about the percentage that is in between. When you have just the right amount of fuel, just the right amount of heat, or just the right amount of oxygen, all you need is a spark and it'll go up in a ball of fire. So when you purge the air out of a gas line, it's best to utilize air monitoring to ensure the concentration levels don't exceed or don't mix just right. And if it does, you need to get out of the hole, back up and reevaluate. Pinch the PE plastic off and decrease your gas flow. It's best when working with natural gas not to have a radio on you. That's an ignition source. Not to have your cell phone on you. That's also an ignition source. Or anything that can produce a spark in the work area while purging that gas line. Because you yourself can have the static electricity to create your own spark and ignition. You don't need nothing else on your body that can create that same ignition. When you deal with the water under pressure, as we said, can cut like a torch, it can cut like a knife. When tapping PVC, the pipe can split, it can break. Be mindful of standing in the mud. If you're suctioned into the mud, you could drown. Try to keep all the mud out to the best of your ability. Put a pallet in there. Put rock in the bottom. Give yourself something solid to stand on so you don't create your own entrapment or engulfment. It's best to shut the water down to make the tap. It's not always possible to do so. You can open a fire hydrant that's on the same leg. It will reduce some of the pressure, especially if you're doing a line repair. If you're doing a repair, it takes some of the pressure off if shutting the water down is not feasible. Shutting off water is not like shutting off gas. You can shut the water off on the main. You kill it, it can kill 100 houses. It's very easy. You turn it back on. There's nothing to light. There's nothing to cut off. And it's perfectly safe. Never stand on the pipe that is not supported underneath. Countless times I've seen folks climb in and out of the work area by stepping on the pipe to get out of the hole. That's what they make a ladder for. OSHA says you're supposed to have a ladder for means of entry, means of exit, every 25 foot when you're in a trench. Use a ladder. That's what it's made for. That pipe is not supported. When you step on it, you do not know how close a bale is. You do not know how old and brittle that pipe is. And your body weight alone can break that pipe and cause you to have a lot more work than you're intended to have. So tapping pipes in summary. Always remember you lock out and tag out when working around anything that is energized. Guys, if you're working in an area of a water plant, a sewer plant, there is power that runs through that ground. A lot of your subdivisions, they have underground wiring. Make sure you know where that underground wiring is. You do not know if that insulation on that underground wiring is nicked or cut when they installed it. And if you got a water main break, it's close enough for that water to continue to flow and that ground gets saturated, take a voltmeter, ground it, stick it to the water before you go to get in that hole. Make sure there is no voltage reading in it. If it is, notify the electric company, have them come out, kill that box, kill the power, lock it out, tag it out, and then retest it with that voltmeter to ensure that there is no energized water or mud before you jump in that hole. When you're working on sewer, double block and bleed it. Kill the sewer flow through it. Kill any hazards that can come. Do your tap and make it like it needs to be made. Do the same with gas. If you have to shut it off, you can pinch the PE plastic. You got valves on the gas mains you can cut off if you need to. If it is an emergency situation, know where your valves are. Do valve maintenance. Know that they can be turned on and off easily when they need to be. Keep a fire extinguisher handy. Make sure you inspect them annually, every couple of months. Pull them off your service truck. Turn them upside down. Make sure you feel the powder shift in them. When they're sitting on that truck and you're driving down the road and that truck bounces, that truck's crossing railroad tracks, that powder chemical inside of that extinguisher will get hard as a rock and pack to the bottom. If it is, take a rubber mallet, tap it on the bottom while it's upside down till you feel the powder shift. Make sure that powder freely flows from one end to the other. Always air test before the tap is made to ensure no leaks are found and before releasing any kind of gas into the system. It will make the repair a whole lot quicker and easier if you have to go back and fix a leak before the gas is added to it. Make sure when you're working with steel lines, make sure you wrap and tar around the welds on the steel pipes. It will ensure no corrosion. do a cathodic protection check to make sure you still have good cathodic protection, and you can cut down on corrosion that way. Know where the valves are to shut down the service line being repaired or added to. Sometimes it will be your last resort to cut off, but if you don't know where they're at, it could be life or death situation, and you need to know where they are. Valve maintenance should be done annually on all your gas valves, should be done on all your water valves. You should at least annually put a T-wrench on them. You do not have to turn them off, but you need to make sure you can get a little bit of a turn on them. And if you can't, a repair order does need to be made to get it corrected. I thank y'all, and I appreciate your time of watching and listening, and I hope it helped. If y'all would like to know anything else, please call me or call Brian. We'd be glad to work with you best that we can. Thank you.